For number 1, which set of ordered pairs represents a function? So remember, for it to be a function, you can only have one output for every input, which means the x's cannot repeat. X's can't repeat. That's the most important thing to remember here when you're looking at the ordered pairs. The x's cannot repeat. So I would go through each one and circle the x's. So here I have 21, 2, 8, and 10. Did any of them repeat?
Yeah.
The x's? 21, 2, 8, and 10.
No.
So that is a function. Then look at the other ones just to make sure. I have 0, 3, 0, and 18. Did any of them repeat? 0 repeated. And C, I have 21, 21, 21, and 21. Did any of them repeat? All of them.
21.
And in D, did any of them repeat for the x's? 3. So the only one where the x's did not repeat was in A. Number 2 says, explain why the relation shown in the table is not a function. And it wanted you to use mathematical language. It wants you to use the words input and output. So remember, the definition of a function is that for every input, there can only be one output. For every input, there can only be one output. And remember that the x's are the inputs and the y's are the outputs.
Okay, so let's say there's four inputs and 3 outputs. Would that be okay?
4 inputs and 3 outputs. So that would mean that yes, that's fine.
Okay.
So the zeros here, you have 1 0 that goes to 3, and you have the other 0 that goes to -9. So if we think back to that vending machine, that would mean that if I pressed a button on the vending machine, I got 2 different DVDs. I got DVD 3 and DVD -9. So that cannot be a function. When you press a button, you should only be able to get one movie. Now, some of you wanted to talk about there being multiple outputs of 3. This is okay. This part is okay. It's okay to press 2 different buttons on the machine and get the same movie come out. That's fine. But you cannot press the same button and get 2 different things come out of it. Number 3 asks you to identify the domain and range. Some of you did not use the correct notation, but I gave you the points anyways. But remember that you need to put it in the curly brackets, the set notation. So what numbers are the domain numbers?
15, 3, 212, 21, and 9.
Good. So those are the x values, 15, 3, 212, 21, and 9. And then our range values are the what values? So 2, 0, and 21. And you do not have to, even though they appear more than once, you don't have to write them more than once.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does it have to be in order just like this?
Not like this. The only one that it has to be in order in is for the mapping. Alright, number 4 is where a lot of you seem to be confused. Manny wants to rent a movie. Each movie costs $1 to rent. The function f of x equals x represents the situation. Explain what x and f of x represent in this situation. So first of all, x stands for what? Cam.
The amount of movies.
The number of movies. X was the number of movies that he rented. So you're plugging in the number of movies rented, and what's your output? What do you find out from that information once you do that? Your f of x, Jordan.
You find out how much he spent on total.
Right, so you find out the cost of renting those movies. So you plug in how many movies you're renting, and what comes out is the cost. Number 5 wants you to use the function f of x equals 2x plus 5 and evaluate for x equals 1/2. So that means you need to plug in 1/2 for x into this equation. Remember, f of x is just a name. So f of 1/2 is just the name of this function. It has nothing to do with multiplication. This is not a mathematical thing. It is just a name. F of function of 1/2. So that means we are plugging in 1/2 into this function. So what is 2 times 1/2?
1.
1. Plus 5 is
6.
6. So f of 1/2 was 6. Number 6 and 7, it says to use the graph to answer questions 6 and 7 about this hot air balloon ride. First of all, it asks for the domain and range. So here's the difference where some of y'all got confused. The domain and range, like we did in number 3, we listed them as points because we had separate points. In this one, what's different about this?
The graph.
It's a graph and
No point.
there's no points. It's all connected. So this was continuous while this was discrete. When it's discrete, when you have separate points, you just list the points. When it's continuous, we're going to do that thing where we use the compound inequality. So for the domain, what's the smallest number for the domain? 0. What is the greatest number for the domain? 60. So 0 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 60. That means the whole graph fits between 0 and 60. The range, what is the smallest number in the range? 0. And what is the highest number?
400.
400. It's the tallest point in the graph. Not what number the graph goes up to, but the tallest point of the actual line itself, which was 400. So 0 is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 400. And then what is the y-intercept? So what does y-intercept mean?
Where it meets y.
Where it what?
Where it meets y.
Where it crosses the y-axis. There is no x. It has nothing to do with x. I saw a lot of people talk about x. It is the y-intercept. It is where it crosses the y-axis, which is this axis right here. Where does it cross the y-axis?
0.
0, 0. And in the context of this situation, what does that mean? What does it have to do with the balloon and the height and the minutes, Jordan?
The balloon went up, it didn't go up in 0. Or like
Okay, so 0 minutes would be the what? What do you say? The starting point. So the hot air balloon started at 0 feet off of the ground.
So we have to put that to get it right.
Something along those lines. So even if you didn't put exactly this, if you kind of had the idea, I gave you the point. So this one was worth 2 points, one for the point, one for the intercept point, and one for the explanation.
Yes.
Everything was worth 2 points except for number 1, 2, and 5 were only worth 1 point. Everything else was worth 2.